Here we have another beautiful performance from Magnus Carlsen from the semifinals of the Julius Baer Generation Cup, and it's just really incredible to see just how easy he makes it look to completely demolish a super grandmaster, in this case Vincent Keymer, who's rated almost 2700, yet ends up with a lost position by like move 10 with the white pieces. But anyway, let's not delay any longer and let's just take a look at this game. Keymer plays c4, English opening, and we end up with this symmetrical structure until Carlsen breaks the symmetry with e6. So he's able to strike in the center first with d5, but Keymer is able to play d4 on the next move. And here we have some central pawn tension. Carlsen deals with this with the move a6. The idea is to prevent any bishop b5 check nonsense, and he also has ideas of taking on c4, and once the bishop captures there, b5, you play that and kick the bishop, expanding on the queen side. So Keymer doesn't like that, so he plays c takes d5, and Carlsen recaptures with the pawn. He's not worried about d takes c5 and getting this isolated pawn here because he has enough control over the square in front of the isolated pawn. He's not worried about it. That's what it's all about. When there's an isolated pawn, if you can control the square in front of the pawn, you know, that's what you want to do. g3 is played by Keymer, looking to fianchetto the bishop. c4 played by Carlsen, which is an interesting decision. Okay, there's not going to be any more possibility of this taking on c5, but this pawn is kind of a weakness here. It's targeted by the knight, and after bishop g2, it's potentially targeted by the bishop. So Carlsen decides to just play bishop b4, looking to eliminate one of the pieces targeting his weakest pawn. It's a good move. And now Keymer goes wrong with this ambitious queen to a4 check idea. He should have just castled here, and then after castle, maybe just something like bishop d2. Just keep things nice and solid. But this queen a4, it's a little too ambitious, and it's not working. Carlsen plays knight c6 because it was forced. You have to defend this bishop. And now knight e5, putting pressure on this piece which is pinned, and it's the only defender of this bishop here. Now on the surface, this looks kind of nice for white. I would probably break the pin with bishop d7 just to be safe, and then after this, and you have to take here on c3, you're going to lose the bishop, and this, and then queen b4. This is maybe slightly in black's favor, but it's nothing great. We should probably mention b5. Not a great move because knight takes c6, hits the black queen, so you're not winning the queen there. And after this, white's actually the preferred side here. Slightly better, but it's close to being equal. But Carlsen played the best move here. He played castle. He says, you know what? I'm not worried about you taking on c6. So, and that's what happened. Knight takes c6, and now bishop takes c3 check. Again, you have to do that so you don't lose your bishop after you recapture the knight on c6. And Carlsen knew that queen takes c6 is not good for white. You can sack that pawn because after queen to a5, defending d5, that was necessary. White does not have a good position here. Where are you going to develop that bishop? You have to go to d2. That's a pretty sad square. I mean, unless you want to go to b2. But guess what's coming? Rook to b8. And you cannot defend like this. The whole point of this is bishop f5. And white is not going to be able to contest the only open file. And, it's just not worth it grabbing that pawn. And Keymer, he's been around the block, even though he's only like 17. He knows that castling is what you want to do here. But bishop f5 anyway. And a rook is not coming to this square. But at least Keymer gets bishop a3 because the queen's up here to protect. And, hitting the rook e8. Now here, if I was analyzing this position, I don't know what I would say. I would maybe favor black just based on the fact that you can't put a rook here as white, but I would not think that this position is almost two pawns in black's favor like Stockfish says it is right now. That just seems crazy to me. Really? That bad for white? But Carlsen and Stockfish, they're in a whole different world of chess ability than me. So queen takes c6 is what Keymer plays because white doesn't really have anything else to do. So you might as well take a pawn because you have no real activity here. And now, queen to a5. This looks kind of tempting. This is not what Carlsen played. But I was looking at this move and I thought, maybe that's a good move. I bet you cannot spot white's best move here. See if you can see it. Bishop to e7, threatening to take on f6 and mess up the pawn structure. Of course, you cannot take that bishop or you will lose this rook here. It's not an easy move to spot. So what are you going to do about that problem? You got to move the knight, I guess. You can go here, and then you can attack the queen, and then you can kick the knight with f3, and then you can get an e4, and you're expanding, and it's okay. Pawn takes, even this. Bishop takes here, queen takes on c4. So, yeah, white is fine in that variation. I wonder. It makes me wonder if Carlsen was even aware of that idea. But he plays a better move. He plays rook to e6, attacking the queen. Okay, queen goes to a4. Still doesn't look too bad for white. But Carlsen, here he plays the top engine move, h5, planning to go to h4, which you don't really want as white. Keymer wisely plays h3. Now if h4 is played, g4 is going to be the response. If you don't do something like that, if you just play some, I don't know, some passive move, rook to c1 there, h4, and now you have some problems. If you don't take the pawn, if you just move, let's say you move a rook again, pawn takes, knight e4, then we're going to put the rook here to h6 and we're going to attack along that open file. You don't really want that open file to your king. But if you take the pawn, now you get knight g4, and your plan is queen c7, going to hit that pawn, so what are you going to do about that? You try to drive the knight away. Now guess what happens? Knight takes f2. You can sack a piece, and after this, queen takes h4 check. You got 2 pawns for the piece there. Well, actually, no, because white had taken a pawn earlier. But white is totally lost here because you're going to bring the rook in, and you're going to, right here, if you try to add defense to the bishop, there's even queen takes h3 because the bishop's pinned. So white will lose quickly in that line. So, Keymer, he's playing defensively. He's playing well, you know, for having a lost position. Now, bishop d3 from Carlsen. He's getting the bishop in a really aggressive post, hitting a rook. It's significant that he's hitting this square and this square. This comes into play in a few moves down the road. Now the rook moves to c1, and we have knight to e4. Carlsen is positioning his pieces to do something terrible to Keymer over here on the king side. So now the move played is queen to d1. Let's say it was black's turn to move again. What is the threat here? Again, knight takes f2. King takes, queen g5. It hits e3 with the rook and the queen, and also after you defend that pawn, you're going to hit this pawn here, and there's no good way to defend that pawn. So you try to move the king, and this is going to run into mate. Remember how I said this bishop was in a good place? Yep, there's no queen c2 to defend, and there's no rook here to defend this bishop. So that's very nice for white. Queen d1 played, just getting the queen down here to try to help defend. Now Carlsen plays queen g5. He actually could have taken on f2 already. And this still works, even with this queen here, because queen g5, okay, queen can go to e1 to defend here, but we'll go here and just pile up on that pawn. And the king's going to have to get out of the way, and then we just take, and then we take on g3, and yeah. So, knight takes f2 could have been played, but queen g5 is just as strong, maybe stronger. The point is, knight takes f2 and queen to g5 are kind of interchangeable. It doesn't matter what order you play them in, the threats are still coming, and so you might as well just make the less risky move first, just on the off chance that you miscalculated something with the sacrifice. So queen to e1, getting the queen in position to defend these dark squares. Rook a to e8, getting the other rook involved in this attack on the king side. King to h2, just trying to get the king to a safe place. Rook here, okay. Now maybe the threat will be knight takes g3. Like if white did nothing, knight takes g3, pawn takes, rook takes e3, hitting the queen, hitting this pawn 3 times, something like that. So at this point, Keymer is like, all right, I need to try to get some activity. I'm just getting slaughtered over here on the king side. I'll offer the exchange. I'll let Carlsen take my rook on b1 if he wants to. Maybe he was hoping Carlsen would keep trying to attack over here on the king side with knight takes g3, and by some miracle, Carlsen would miss this fact that you can't take on e3 anymore with the rook. Now, right here, h4 is still winning, according to the computer, but this rook takes e3 doesn't really work anymore because of the following variation. h4 hitting the queen, you go to h6, the queen goes here, and then you want to take here, but the problem is rook to b8 check, king moves, and the whole point is queen takes h6 comes with check. If that did not come with check, then black would win by this move right here. Rook takes on g2, and then recapture the queen. But since this comes with check, now you have to take the queen and then just rook here to defend the bishop. And white is winning. So that was Keymer's dream that he hoped would happen. It was his only hope at this point. But Carlsen says, you know what? I don't care about this kingside attack anymore. I'll just win some material here. I'll just take your rook. Rook takes b1. Now he's still a pawn down, I believe. But he's got the exchange, so if you count the material, he's like a pawn up. Really much more than that, because he has all the winning chances here. The queen drops back. He says, all right, maybe I don't have enough firepower to sacrifice over here on the king side. I'll just consolidate here. And now bishop b4, because I think Carlsen was maybe going to come out here to a5. So the bishop b4 move just stops that. Now we get rook to b6. And now the rook gets off that file because he's anticipating some kind of a battery here. He's anticipating Carlsen's next move, queen to b8, which is what is played. So there's a battery here, so that bishop would have been pinned if that rook was still here. But the bigger threat to this queen to b8 move is to play h4, because this pawn is now pinned. So Keymer, he realizes that, so he plays h4. So he doesn't want that pawn to get attacked. Carlsen hits the bishop. And now the bishop drops back to a3. What about bishop takes a5, grabbing another pawn? Rook b2, this is just too much activity to allow black. You have to take out the knight because f2 is attacked, and then here the rook is hitting, okay, so this rook's hitting a2, and there's also this threat of rook takes h4, since this pawn is pinned. So, yeah, it's not a good road to go down. He decides to go with this bishop a3 move instead. Alright, so you're not going to get your rook in there. Carlsen plays here. He's preparing to play this queen to e8 move, which is what happens next after rook d1. Queen e8, looking to go to a4 now. Bishop c1. So Keymer is just retreating all his pieces into a little cluster here. I think it's like if you're in a snowstorm and you want to just huddle together to try to survive this Norwegian blizzard that's coming for you. But it's not going to work. Rook to b1, penetration, f3, driving that knight back, it's fine, d6, and now bishop to d2. But rook b2, hitting this pawn here, and then we get rook b1, trying to get some activity. If you just defend like this, we're going queen a4 anyway. Going to win that pawn. So he wants to get some activity with rook b1. So Carlsen says, okay, I'll take the pawn. The pawns are now even again, and Carlsen just has the exchange. So is Carlsen going to be able to convert? Yeah, I think he's going to be able to convert this pretty easily. Queen to c1 is played, and now we have knight to f5, targeting e3. And so e4 is played. Okay, pawn takes, pawn takes. Now what do you do here as black? Well, most players would maybe move that knight somewhere, but Carlsen says, I can give back the exchange, and I'm still winning here. I will have an extra pawn and all the attacking chances. Now Keymer doesn't even go for it. He could have played this, bishop takes e4, queen takes e4, and then rook b2, but now look at the black pieces. Look at the king, look at this pinned bishop. Look at this knight e3 move coming. So you can try rook b2 to try to challenge that rook. Queen e2 check here, knight e3. You have to take out the knight, but then you lose the rook, stuff like that. So he knew that was not the way to go, and he plays this bishop f4 move. Okay, time for a quiz. What should black play here? Carlsen, with his computer-like mind, found the simplest solution. Rook to e2. Sacking the queen, because hopefully you saw this rook to b8 move. The queen is pinned, but you can take this bishop with check. After the king moves, you can take that rook. And now, you got rook h2 check here. Rook goes here, check. King has to go there, the only move. Rook h1 check, and at this point, Keymer resigned because after king takes g2, you're getting your queen back, and you're just a piece up. So, just an amazing, flawless performance by Carlsen. Just making it look elementary. Is he the greatest player in history? Let me know in the comments. And subscribe to the channel because I'm going to be making more videos, a lot like this one, very soon.